Hello, welcome. My name is Diana O'Brien. I'm a tour guide and I'm also a member of the board of directors here at Grant Cottage. The program is about the Peace Corps. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy, on September 21st, 1961, officially started the Peace Corps. His brother-in-law, or his sister's husband, Sergeant Shriver, was in charge of the Peace Corps for many years. Now, our program is going to honor Peace Corps folks and hopefully maybe even inspire some people to consider being in the Peace Corps. I have with me today Terrence O'Brien, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his experiences when he was in the Peace Corps in Indonesia. So T, what inspired you to join the Peace Corps?
I had done a little bit of service work in El Salvador, and I liked some of the volunteer and service work I did. So my father told me about the Peace Corps, and that's how I got interested in learning about the Peace Corps.
Did you have to be interviewed when you applied?
You do have to be interviewed for the Peace Corps. It's probably one of its main requirements.
Okay, and how long was it after you got interviewed that you found out you made the Peace Corps, you were in it?
Well, the Peace Corps is very different from when I applied. I served in 2013 through 2015 in Indonesia. When I applied, it would take a long time, maybe a year, for you to figure out where you were going to be placed. The Peace Corps has expedited the process recently, so now you're able to give a preference of countries you would like to serve in, and you can also, and it takes about 6 months from the time you apply until you learn from where you may be placed.
And where did they place you again?
I served in Indonesia.
Indonesia. And what exactly did you do when you were in Indonesia?
So in Indonesia, my main assignment was to teach English. So I taught English in a small village called Kasiman, and I worked with 3 Indonesian English teachers for two years, giving them new techniques on how to teach English.
Wow, that's really neat. Did you get to meet other Peace Corps people while you were in Indonesia?
So again, it depends on the program. The Peace Corps, again, has changed a lot from when I applied. So they now have a program called Peace Corps Response, where you may go to a country for a couple weeks to a couple months, depending on your specialty. So you may go individually nowadays, I'm not sure. When I was applying, and usually you go with a group of people, so yes.
Oh, great. Did you stay with a host family?
In my country, I did stay with a host family. I know the Peace Corps in Indonesia is a newer program, so they had all the volunteers stay with host families. However, again, it depends on the country and where you serve.
All right. And what was the biggest challenge as far as, did you get homesick? Did you not like the food, or how was all that, would you say?
Depends on the day. I mean, some days you are lonely, some days it's different things. You can't communicate with people because of a language barrier or cultural barrier, so it really depends on the day. There was nothing that was more difficult or harder than other things throughout my experience.
Wow, that's amazing. And would you recommend, for people that are thinking maybe of enlisting in the Peace Corps, would you recommend it as far as a life growth kind of thing?
I think the Peace Corps is a program every high school student should have to do. It gives you the ability to travel the world with not too many financial restrictions. You get to learn about a new culture, and you get to learn a new language. I don't know too many things that are better than that. And you get to have food. You get to try different food, which seems to be the craze these days. So if in the future, since I've done the Peace Corps and I know a little bit more what it's about, I would definitely like to do it again just because I have a footing in it.
Now, my understanding also is that people of all ages could join the Peace Corps. I remember way back when President Carter was president, his mother, Lillian Carter, was a Peace Corps volunteer. So, you know.
So there is no criteria for the Peace Corps. Some people may think you need to have a 4-year degree, but you don't. If you specialize in something, the Peace Corps will more likely than not allow you to volunteer. And there is no age limit. The only thing that might hold someone back would be health-related issues.
All right. Well, thank you, T, for sharing your experiences. Hopefully we'll see you when we do the program next year in September 2022. We will have 2 more volunteers hop on board and tell you about their experiences in Africa.
Hi, I'm David Gittleman. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and I live in Albany, New York. And I'm the Vice President of the Return Peace Corps Volunteers of Northeast New York.
Hi, and I'm Renee St. Jacques. I'm President of the Return Peace Corps Volunteers of Northeastern New York. I live up in Argyle, New York. I grew up there. I served in the Peace Corps in Cameroon from 2014 to 2016. And now I'm back in Argyle, and I work for New York Farm Bureau in the public policy sector.
And I served in Zaire, which is called DR Congo now, from 1982 to 84. I worked on a child vaccination program for 2 years in a central region of that large country. And I worked for 32 years with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in global health, and I continue part-time now, also in global health.
David, what motivated you to join the Peace Corps?
Well, in the days that people, before social media and other distractions, stamp collecting and coin collecting was something of interest. And my mother got me started on stamp collecting, international stamps, when I was 6 or 7 years old. And so at the age of 7, I said to myself, I want to do something international. I want to be traveling. I want to be serving abroad. I knew it right away. And so the whole time of my studies went for international relations, studies about Africa, and so forth. I did my junior year abroad in Dakar, Senegal. And with all of that, particularly the exposure of being in Senegal, I saw what the Peace Corps does, and I said, as soon as I graduate from undergrad, that's what I'm going to do.
That's for you. How about you, Renee?
I was working at my local bank and in investments and learning all about that, and I finished my master's and studied some public policy, but then I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I really wanted to experience the world more, and especially different cultures, and Peace Corps came up, and I thought, gosh, this is perfect. So that was the decision, and I went away and then came back and got into the public policy realm. So it worked out really well, but it definitely wasn't on my radar until after graduate school. It's a little different.
David, could you tell us what you did in your country?
Yes.
A little bit about the people, what you did, how you got there even? I know you must have flown, but go ahead.
Sure. So I was very, very lucky, I would say, to be assigned by the Peace Corps to go to DR Congo, Zaire. During my junior year abroad, the director of my program at the university, by coincidence, had just been assigned to be the new U.S. director of the Peace Corps in Zaire. And he was so excellent, I wanted to be there as well. So I did all I could and lobbied, so I was able to go there. I didn't know what I was going to do. I originally was supposed to do small animal husbandry, working with pigs and goats and rabbits and chickens. And during the training, since I already spoke French when I got into the training, and DR Congo is a francophone country, they needed someone who had some level of French to work on the national immunization program for children. So I said, hey, I think I'm probably a little bit more interested in public health. And if you need the French, here I am. And so they turned me over from one program to the other, and they put me into the immunization program and trained me. And then I worked as under an organization and with the World Health Organization and with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Zaire, DR Congo, to carry out that. And a typical day, we had a mobile vaccination team. It went around the capital of Buji-Mayi, about 1 million people, and then we had satellite work outside in the rest of the region. So that's what I did for 2 years.
Wow. And where did you live while you were there?
I was in a city. I was not in a village like many others within the Peace Corps program had. So they assigned me a very small house, which I shared with another volunteer. It was made of concrete and not very well made, mind you, but it was still a house. It had running water when it felt like it. We had to get our water either from the city with the pipes open up every 3 weeks, about between 3 and 5 in the morning, and otherwise we would take pails of it and from other places, water sources, and that's how we'd bathe and cook and so forth. So I was pretty comfortable relative to others that may have been a little bit more rustic, but it was still it was pretty basic living and still allowed me to do what I needed to do.
So you went into it, though, knowing that this could be how you would be living for the next 27 months.
Actually, I thought I would be living in a village hut within a family or in a concrete smaller house within a much smaller community. I had no idea I'd be assigned to a regional capital of 1 million people and be working with the international and U.S. organizations on something. This is not what I envisioned. It turned out that this is what informed the rest of my career, fortunately.
Did you ever go through periods of homesickness? Was it?
It went up and down at that time, before social media, before email even. There was one pay telephone at the post office in town, and I waited my turn, and I was able to speak to my family once by phone for 10 minutes at that payphone, at that infamous payphone. And I certainly missed them, but I got news. We had reasonable access to letters 3 weeks late, but we got them. Of course, things have changed a lot, and most people have easy access via an iPhone or similar, and easy email access. So communication with family is way better. It was a lot more limited when I was there, but it was still okay. We had enough communication.
And Renee, tell us a little bit about your experience.
And this shows that every Peace Corps experience is different, and maybe not bad or good, or just different. And so you never know exactly what your experience is going to be like until you go through it. And so I lived in a smaller village, but it was just outside a city in Cameroon. I was in the Adamawa region, which kind of a drier, hot but drier climate, thank goodness. So I didn't have the humidity to deal with as other volunteers in Cameroon had to deal with. But I worked with farmers. I was an agribusiness volunteer, and even though I raised sheep when I was growing up in Argyle, they decided that at my village, after doing a community needs assessment, they needed to learn how to grow soy and to diversify their diet, but also help with crop rotation, since a lot of corn is grown there. So rotating soy and corn, as we do in the United States, is very important. So that was my project over there. And I did some other things as well, some youth volleyball, team making and everything. But other than that, it was more agriculture and business based. And so I lived in a smaller house with no running water, sometimes electricity once in a while. But it was a good experience, though, because it made me realize how strong I am and that we can live a certain way if we need to. And So it was, I don't regret it at all.
And Renee, what do you do now?
So now I still have a connection to agriculture. I still love raising animals back at home, but then now I am in public policy. I'm a lobbyist for New York Farm Bureau. So I help represent the farmers in New York State by meeting with the legislature and with different state agencies to try and get good agricultural policy passed.
So it's sort of, the Peace Corps sort of laid the groundwork for what you're doing now.
Definitely. Yep. I was on the, before Peace Corps, I was working at the bank and kind of wondering where I was supposed to go. I had studied public policy. I had grown up on a farm, but doing the Peace Corps gave me that experience to blend the two together and get into this field that I now love.
And David, what about you? What are you doing now for a living?
Well, after I retired from CDC in Atlanta, where I was doing global health for many years, including immunization, like I did in the Peace Corps, the last 20 years, including the last, let's say, 17 years in Atlanta, I've been working on global malaria control, particularly with malaria programs in Africa and Southeast Asia. That's a lot of on the prevention side, and many of the things that I did in doing these mass campaigns for vaccination help inform what I'm doing now in getting nets out and good drugs out to the people that need them in places that are endemic for malaria. So that's what I'm doing on a part-time basis now as a consultant.
That is great.
No, I've got a question. What interests me is that the idea of we were talking about this previously with T and Diana, was the cultural experience, and is there any anecdotes or memories or things that are kind of that you took away that both illustrated both points, cultural differences and human similarities? Is there anything you can think of off top of your head that really illustrated that to you going into an environment that was, I'm sure culturally different?
Most definitely. I think that's what I was looking for to grow as a person, was to have that experience. And growing up in a small town in New York, a village with more cows than people, going to another country and experiencing their culture, and yes, realizing the differences, but then the similarities, where I was like, oh, I can't believe that this is where I'm living in Cameroon in this village, that this is the same as where I was back at home in Argyle. I mean, it's just, and I think that was in sharing culture. That's the most important too, because every American is different who goes over to these countries. And I have to say, my Cameroonian friends were very surprised to hear that I grew up raising sheep, or living in a small town with less people than there is in that village in Cameroon, and raising Australian Shepherd dogs for herding. I mean, I was also sharing my culture with them, and I think that's the whole point of Peace Corps, is that sharing of cultures, so that we appreciate our differences and our similarities, make us better people for the world.
Mm-hmm. And absolutely, just building on that, I think one of the very specific things that people in America who often do volunteer for the Peace Corps come with, whether they realize it or not, is kind of a leadership and organizational management ability, to be able to come in based on wherever they've come, whether you're from a more rural area or an urban area. You come out with a different kind of sense of how you organize things methodically, how you put people together, what are important things within a community, within the political structure, within the economic limitations that you have. You work within a system. And some of the things that I had come with as well, I think, that I had to offer, was something that culturally people wouldn't necessarily be there, but people locally kind of realized that they could be leaders and they could work within the system, and you kind of energize people to be able to take up these kinds of things that will make their society better. At the same time, I learned probably 3 times as much than I was giving in terms of how to work within a community. That anything that you say or anything that you might do, you can't be assuming that this is going to be better than what they already know about and have to offer. You're not the first person coming in to try to say you got to do it this way, whether from internally in their country or from the outside. So a lot of the things that I learned about was just simply the art of listening, and listening to the community and listening to what was there, and being sensitive to start from what they know and what is important from them, and helping them build on what they already know and what they're strong at, and having confidence to go from there.
Yeah, because you do a community needs assessment when you first get there, so you're not just going in with a project. It's finding out what your community already knows and what they need, and going from there.
Exactly.
Now, for the purposes of people thinking of joining the Peace Corps, I have a couple of questions. Number one, is there an age limit? Do you have to be a college graduate? Do you have to be 25 years old? Can you be 60 years old? And the other thing too is that I didn't know when my son was applying was they don't take everybody. They get a lot of applicants, but they don't take as many people in as they get people that apply. And one more question is, were you interviewed, of course, before you were accepted into the Peace Corps? So David, we'll start with you.
Let me see if I can get all of those. There's
Yeah,
lots
it's
of
a lot,
really
it's a
good
lot.
questions. Let me start with the process. My understanding is essentially, if you're 18 and over, I believe,
Yeah,
you're
I
able
think
to serve, and they've had people in their early 80s. As Peace Corps has matured over time, in fact, they've recognized the importance of getting people who are much more experienced, meaning who might be older, and inviting them to be part of the experience, because they have tools that countries and communities specifically request, rather than only those that may come right out of college with a lot of enthusiasm and energy, very, very bright, but may not have the life experience and technical skills that to impart that someone older would. So I served with a couple who were in their mid-60s and were both Holocaust survivors, in fact. And they did some phenomenal work in a public health region where I was. And then you had some excellent ones that had just come out of college, and just with the gut enthusiasm, particularly in communications, were so good at interchange with families and children and women's causes, for example, gender issues that they were so good at. So it ran the gamut. In terms of people being refused, I think that there may be many reasons why they might turn down some. It all depends upon what the country is looking for. If the country is looking for people that may already come with teaching experience, for example, on languages or in agriculture and so forth, they may be looking for those, and those that don't particularly have the skills that are needed, they may be less interested in having at that time. And there are others that they assess that feel that maybe this is not the right thing to do. You have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you get a sense that maybe they need to, being away for 2 years is not the best thing. So it's on a personal level as well as a skills and professional level. I think that the Peace Corps is trying to assess people. But I think that you're going to have a really good perspective on that.
Well, it's just but everybody's different. I mean, I think it's depending on what your experience is. I mean, there are people that go right from college and have the experience, and they are ready to share something with another culture. Whereas I had to go through graduate school and get some more experience. It was my first time applying after graduate school, but still, I think that helped me become accepted because I had that experience to share. Whereas maybe it would be when somebody is 60 or when they're. I mean, it just depends on what those countries are looking for, and and what Peace Corps is looking for at that time.
Yeah, we do have to look at the age and qualifications more specifically. In the past, they were taking in people without a bachelor's degree, but maybe had lots of experience in agriculture, for example, in running a farm or running a small business, and they would make an exception early on to be able to do that. Whether they consider that continue that, I'm not sure. So we'd have to check that.
Was President Carter's mother was in the Peace Corps as an older person,
Right,
I
yes.
believe.
You sure was?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
had somebody in my group who was older, and I think he was retired. Had owned a bank or something, and was retired from that. And he did business. Was teaching business, and I think he was in his 70s. And so it just depends, and it's really it's that commitment. I mean, I think the 2-year or 27 months commitment is something that you really have to decide when you're applying and doing the interview. That is making that commitment for 2 years, and I think that that was something that from the get-go I was like, if I get in, this is my commitment. Whether it turns out that I do what I want there or not, it's just making that commitment is very important. Our returned Peace Corps volunteers of Northeastern New York, so anyone who does finish Peace Corps and they come back to this area can join our group, and it's an important support group, because when you get back from doing your Peace Corps service, sometimes you want to talk about your stories forever, and your family at some point might say, you've already told that story like 3 times. So really our group is supportive of each other, and we love to do community service events as well.
Thank you, Renee and David,
Oh,
for coming here up at Grant Cottage for this wonderful interview.